everybody. File in to our virtual panel room. Welcome to How to Be a D&D Designer, presented by Dungeon Masters Guild. I am Lysa Penrose, one of your moderators. I am the brand manager over at Dungeon Masters Guild. And if you are not familiar, DM's Guild is the world's greatest marketplace for oh my god, I'm so happy about my pun that I've forgotten the rest of words. It's a marketplace where you can write and publish your own Dungeons and Dragons content using a lot of Wizards of the Coast's IP. Also an amazing community, but we're going to get all into that. Let's introduce the rest of our awesome panel, shall we? Starting with my fellow moderator, Jack.
Hello, welcome. I'm Jack. I'm the creator relations representative for One Bookshelf. So I do a lot of smaller creators, a lot of the DM's Guild and the smaller drive-through RPG creators stuff. Help them navigate the website and get everything set up.
A very helpful helper, indeed. And we've got three amazing, best-selling D&D designers with us today. Let's go through. Everyone, introduce yourself. Let folks know how they might know you. If there's like a DM's Guild title that you're best known for. We will start with Kat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kat Kruger. You probably best know me for D20 Dames. I'm chief wordsmith at my owner-operated freelance game design company, Steampunk Unicorn Studio. Most recently, I've worked on the D&D Nerds collaboration. So if you see Nerds on the shelf and you get your free little adventures with that, that was me. On DM's Guild, most recently, I would say Eyes Unclouded is one of the top ones. And also just came out with a Traps book I edited. So, yeah.
Nice. Thank you, Kat. We also have with us Jacky.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jacky, and I guess people know me best on Twitter as Death by Mage, and it's a brand that I stuck to for many years. But I think for the DM's Guild, people will best know me for Journey into the Feywild. And also, I actually worked with Kat as well on Eyes Unclouded, which is the most recent one I think I've worked on in a while. Yeah, and I'm also the creative lead manager for Unbreakable Publishers, which is a TTRPG platform for Asian creators to sign on and get into the TTRPG space.
Gosh, everyone's working on such amazing things. And third on our panel is the lovely Sadie.
Hello. I'm Sadie Lowry. I am a writer and editor in the TTRPG sphere. I worked on Eyes Unclouded with Jacky and Kat. So, this is a really lovely reunion. I'm probably known best for my work on the Adventurers Domestic Handbook, Eyes Unclouded, and I have released an article and have been editing Arcadia articles for MCDM. And so those are probably my biggest hits.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start us off, ease into this panel, I'd love to know how you all became D&D designers. Did you start out as a dungeon master? What brought you to Dungeon Masters Guild? Basically, what is your D&D origin story? And I can call on folks, or if you want to do like a finger raise, if you're like super ready to answer a question, I'm a proponent of the finger raise as well.
I feel like mine is the longest story.
Well, it sounds like you're ready to go, though. So, Jacky, let's start with you.
Sure. Let's journey back to the year 2001.
2 decades ago.
2 decades ago. I got my intro into D&D 3rd edition, and I started playing, and my DM at the time. So for most people who have their normal D&D experience, which is probably they start at first level characters and then work their way up, I never experienced that, honestly. I never even got it. So I started playing D&D at level 20 because we started playing epic level rules moving in. So I never knew the experience of being first level ever. Like ever. I think in all my years of playing D&D, I think I've only played first level characters like 3 times. The rest of the time I've never started a first level. So like I don't have the normal beginnings of a D&D player. But I will say moving into 2006, that was when I started going into college, and then I started doing homebrewing, and I was in a lot of homebrewing communities for a long time. So I was already game designing and tweaking and playing with the rules for a long time. And then I took a little break. And then when we came back for 5th edition, I was very excited to homebrew again. I started a blog, and from the blog, I moved into my first product, which was Journey into the Feywild, and the rest was history. I'm now doing all the wonderful things.
That's awesome. Kat, what about you?
Mine involves a meet cute.
Oh, best panel.
So prior to becoming a game designer, I was a young adult novelist. So I was a guest at HowCon Sci-Fi convention, which is a convention in Halifax, Canada. And there I had a personal assistant, and who happened to also be the personal assistant to the D&D program specialist that was there from Seattle. And so met him at this little soiree, told him that I had never played D&D, obviously had heard of it. Like I read all the Dragonlance books and all of that. But he was there to teach people how to play 5e because that's what was coming out in 2014. So played a tutorial the next day. Loved the game. It was an hour and a half. Immediately after that, I got the starter set. Decided I was going to DM because I couldn't find any DMs. So I went from my 1.5 hour tutorial to becoming a DM at home. Then I started teaching creative writing at a at-risk school for kids, and decided I was going to do creative writing through Dungeons and Dragons. Eventually, the person who taught me how to play D&D came back the next year. We hit it off in a different way. And so, yeah, he's my current partner who works at Wizards. And, you know, I just, like, D&D was such an eye-opening creative tool for me that I just really dove right into it. And, you know, so I started D20 Dames with a bunch of femme POC. And, you know, we've been going at that since 2017, publishing on DM's Guild, some of the adventures that I've written there. And then I've gone on to, you know, collaborate with lovely people, gone on to do some work with Hasbro, Wizards, the D&D Nerds thing. It's like, it was just like that one tiny moment opened up like a huge career-changing possibilities, because I went from being a novelist to a game designer, and I feel like this is where I should have been all along.
Gosh, what an exciting story, and also so wildly different from Jacky's path, which I love.
Yes.
Sadie, what about you?
Gosh, mine is so different. My first D&D experience was terrible, and we're lucky I'm here. So I grew up, interestingly, like definitely in nerd spheres, but somehow not intersecting with TTRPGs at all. So I mean, I grew up on video games. I was playing video games from the time I could hold a controller, right? So you'd think that I would have been in TTRPGs way sooner, but that didn't happen. So I made friends with with an apartment full of guys at college, and they were super into various nerdy things. I remember sitting at lunch one day and listening to this guy tell me like all about like the in-depth mechanics of his Pokemon TTRPG, and it was like whoo, way over my head, but I was like, okay, yeah, okay. And the first time I played, it was at my friend's apartment, and her husband at the time ran a game for us, except the whole thing was like one giant gotcha, right? It was one of those like, oh, you didn't check this one you know, one part of the dungeon or do this one very specific thing so you die. And like it was horrible. I walked away from that night like I'm never playing D&D again. Because he just like made fun of our characters and killed us, and it was not fun at all. So I kind of skirted around the TTRPG community for a few more years after that, mostly just not intersecting, but I was always a writer and I was always a creator and I was always a nerd. I met two of my best friends on this online writing community, whose names I won't mention for privacy reasons, but that's okay. They're wonderful people. And so like we were writing together, drawing together, and I fell into watching Critical Role. And that was kind of the first time where I was like, oh, D&D can be like a story. Oh, okay. I like stories. I write stories. Matt writes stories. I can write. Okay. And so I was one day on Twitter, and I don't remember how this happened, but the Write Your First Adventure workshop from the Storytelling Collective crossed my Twitter timeline, and I grabbed one of my close friends, Amber Litke. I grabbed her and I was like, hey, do this with me. Hey, like come write an adventure with me. She was like, okay. And so we published, this was a few years ago. I think I'm coming up on my second or third anniversary. I forget. Time's a void. Time is a weird soup. And we published our first adventures, got kind of immediately folded into the community, which was wonderful. And it was all downhill from there. I think seeing uphill. It snowballed from there. It
a weird reverse snowball.
Yeah. Reverse snowball. And so that was really what got me pulled in, was this realization that that TTRPGs were the storytelling format that I loved my entire life, with the game format that I've loved my entire life, with people that I love, and yeah, I can't get enough of it. I'm hooked now.
That's awesome. So going into this question, my hope, and I didn't know if this was how it was going to work out, but my hope was that it would demonstrate that there are lots of different paths to becoming a D&D designer, and that maybe one of these paths might be relatable to somebody who is viewing, which I think it did demonstrate. All of you came to where you are now from very different starting points and had very different journeys. And in particular, I want to call out a few things Sadie mentioned, which if you're wondering, well, how do I make the leap into being a D&D designer? Sadie mentioned Storytelling Collective, which does awesome workshops for writing your first adventure. So write that name down, look them up later. And also the community. The community collaborates a lot on anthologies, where maybe you're just writing an encounter rather than a whole adventure, which is a lot less intimidating. And they're often looking for people who are new because they like to welcome new people in. They'll do specific call outs. So following hashtag DMs Guild to see what is going on in those conversations. I'd write that note down as well. But let's get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of being a D&D designer now that we know how you came to that. So what are the differences between, say, being a good dungeon master or being a good designer? And maybe asked a different way, like, what do you think people think a D&D designer looks like? And then what does it actually look like? Sadie, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about this. Because the two I think are more similar than people think, but they're also more different than people think. And what I mean by that is that you both, as a D&D designer, you both need to give more direction than you're used to giving, and you also need to allow for more options than you're used to doing. Because I don't know about other DMs, but I know my party very well, and I know what they like, I know what they respond to, and I know what kind of adventures they like. And so I don't need to plan as much because I kind of have an idea of what they'll do and I can improv off them. It's a very give and take relationship. And also, I plan for them. They really like social encounters. They love social encounters. So there's, my DMing tends to be full of social encounters and maybe pulls back a little on combat. Being a D&D designer is being aware that there are other play styles other than your table and your favorite play style, and giving enough guidance that DMs can run adventures for almost any kind of group. So you need to be cognizant really of, some people really like social encounters, some people really like exploration, some people really like combat. And the more that you can plan for those contingencies and give those opportunities, the more widely well received your writing will be. And not necessarily, you don't have to, I think, if you want to write a meat grinder, you can, but you understand at that point that you're limiting your audience to heavy combat writing. My players like to stay on the railroad, right? Like they want to see the story. They're less shenanigansy. They want to see what the story is because they know that whatever I've got planned, the story's probably pretty good. But when I'm writing, I have to write for the idea that some parties might be more shenanigansy. They might kill that random dude. And I need to write what happens if they kill that random dude. There's a lot more awareness of the market when you're writing for a lot of other people.
That is a very good point. Kat.
I was going to say, just going off what Sadie was saying here, like I like to say that being a D&D designer is, what you're doing is writing a technical manual for having fun. And it uses both sides of your brain. It uses like the very technical side where you have to know the mechanics, what the DC is for certain checks, but you're also writing the story. And it's a combination of all of that and all the pillars of play, where you're looking at the role play, social, exploration, combat. All three of it goes in there, some mix of it. So even in a meat grinder, you're probably still exploring a dungeon, talking to some NPC. It's just like the levers that you use in each adventure is just going to be dialed up in different ways. Yeah.
I just imagine when you said levers, Kat, I was thinking like the Wizard of Oz, just pulling all the levers. And that's really what you are. There's a reason it's called Dungeon Master Screen.
Yeah.
You're really giving the DM the tools to be the person behind the screen. Like you need to focus on giving them enough tools that they never see that there's someone behind the back, like pulling all the levers, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually think, like, if we were doing the what do people think it looks like, what does it actually look like meme, the Wizard of Oz is like the perfect actual before and after of that.
Yeah.
I also think people think that writing adventure design is like writing a story, and it kind of is, but it's really not. I love what Kat said about it being a technical manual, because there are so many people who go into adventure writing thinking they need to play coy with the DM because they want the DM to be surprised at the end too. And it's like, no, you're not writing a novel. If Sally the shopkeeper is secretly the big bad and she's like a level 20 sorcerer who's also a dragon, the DM will run an adventure better if they know that up front. You want to spoil that for them. You want to give them all the tools they need to cleverly arrange things so that it's a fun surprise for the players. And so I think that's been my advice to a lot of people as an editor. Like, no, you're not playing coy with the DM. Your job is to give them tools.
Absolutely. Which is actually a good transition into the next question that I know Jack has for you all. But before we jump into that one, I want to acknowledge to folks that you are asking some amazing questions in the live chat. A few of them we will get covered in our list of pre-planned questions, and I will try my best to get us to the end so we can answer a few more. But so I'll stop talking now. Jack.
we've seen that there are a lot of ways to get into D&D designing, and a lot of ways to that what a D&D designer can look like. And I forgot to mention this, but I also work with storytelling collectives, so I see a lot of new people. And when you're starting out, have you seen any little mistakes or missteps that you learned like right away? Because I see a lot of people, they start writing a lot, and in our course we're like, make sure you know your scope.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that you've seen?
I can speak from experience because so for Unbreakable Publishers, we also do 5e anthologies as well for D&D. And I will say just a little tease behind the curtain for the upcoming volumes. We've had some instances where the scope of adventures were larger than we asked. And we had to ask our writers to kind of like assess it back and look at what basically it got to a point where we said, okay, there's a little too much of one focus on a pillar and we need to kind of balance it out a little bit. And also we were like, what's important to the story? What's important to the adventure you're writing? Not so much about like the meat grinder necessarily. So we were like, okay, let's reassess it. Let's look at the scope. So one of the big things I will say from personally as a game designer is to think about the scope of what you're writing. Like if you're being told to write a 2-hour adventure, don't try to overcomplicate it. Just think about the main backbone of your story and how to get there, versus trying to fill in every little nook and cranny to fill out the time. So I was like, no, work on the main parts of the story. Make that the center focus. And if you're writing for something longer, you also still need to do that, but worry less about filling in the blanks. Give the tools, as we said, and they will fill, and the DMs will fill in the rest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Like less is more would be my advice, because like when I look back at the very first adventure that I wrote, I tried running it privately shortly after I'd written more adventures, and I was like, why did I put so many NPCs here? This is making my life really, really difficult. Because it was only like a 2 or 3 hour adventure, and I must have had like a dozen NPCs, and I was just like, why? What was the point of all of this? I like, sure, it's flavorful, but like there's no way that you could interact with all of them and get like a fulfilling story, where I could have just had like 3 or 4 NPCs. So, less is more in every aspect of what you're writing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I'm trying to think. I'm like, oh man, those are good answers. I think for me, what I've learned from beginning to now is that I think I've learned that you don't have to do everything, and you don't have to try to be a designer that you aren't. There are a lot of there are people who, and I did this too, who jump on every project and who try to do everything. They try to be a mechanical designer and a narrative designer and a monster designer and some people can do that incredibly well. I have been blown away by so much of the work that I've seen, but I think there's also strength in recognizing what your specific strength is and leading into that throughout your career. I think sometimes we dupe ourselves into thinking that if we want to be a successful designer, we need to be incredible at everything, and that's not true. I mean, if you look at a published book by any company, I can absolutely guarantee you that there were different people who did different things. We'll give this section to so-and-so because she's an incredible monster designer. We'll give this section to so-and-so because he is incredible at story beats. I'm not as great a mechanical designer yet as I want to be, and I'm working on that. I'm studying the designs of other people, and I'm being cognizant of how the game parts fit together. But in the meantime, there is nothing wrong with basically admitting I am a narrative designer first and foremost. And that if I can team up with people who bring mechanical design to the table, then together we can make something even better than if I had tried to do all of it myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of what you all have been chatting about is scope, limiting in collaborative things. And I want to make sure I mention that knowing your scope and making sure you're limiting your scope to something that you'll complete and publish, if that is what your goal is, also very important and something you're able to do if you're just doing a project by yourself as well. So I get a lot of folks who email into Dungeon Masters Guild like, I have this whole world imagined, which is like a whole other thing with Dungeon Masters Guild too, but I have this like level 1 through 20 campaign and blah blah, blah all planned in my head, and this is my first thing, so do you have any guidance for me? And I would say start with an adventure tied to the story that you're imagining, or even an encounter or set of encounters that people can drop into campaigns. I would say rather than tackling, say, an entire school of magic and like 100 different spells, do like a set of 5 spells that people can use. Part of that is like your first thing that you write. Sometimes the hardest thing is just finishing it and getting like brave enough to hit that publish button. Once you do that, everything else will come a lot easier. And you'll kind of make your little splash in the community and have your way of interacting with folks and telling them what you've worked on. I'd also say for Dungeon Masters Guild specifically, I see a lot of folks who don't take advantage of what's extra special about the Dungeon Masters Guild license, which is that you can use D&D IP. So existing settings, existing characters, that is so important because people might be using those things in their campaigns already. So if you create something, say, that is, I don't know, all about Jarlaxle, and people have Jarlaxle in their campaign, they're going to be seeking your title, and Dungeon Masters Guild is the only place they can find something like that. So I'd recommend seeing how you can weave D&D IP into what you create. That's my little like jumping in answer thing. Jack, what other questions do you have for us?
No, that's very good. A lot of using DM's Guild as a resource for creating, as well as just finding and buying things that you want to play, is a really big part of the platform as a whole. Which kind of brings us to the next thing, which when you're starting out, you probably don't have any budget. You probably don't have any money for anything. Do you know of any good free or like low investment resources? Because like I come from the Storytelling Collective, where we have the RPG Writer Workshop, and we have a free version of that. And is there anything kind of like that that would help somebody new?
Stock art packs.
Yeah, I was gonna say like DM's Guild already. Well, the nice thing about the DM's Guild IP is that there actually are artist resources for the artwork that's already been available, and they are strictly allowed to be used in the DM's Guild. So you have a plethora of monsters to use, a monster artwork in there that can easily be found. And if you want to, you can go to the sister store like Drive Through RPG, because if you look at the stock art, there are always stock art that you can also use too. And a lot of them are pretty affordable, and some of the artists go through sales. I've been following Dean Spencer for like, God, how many years now? And like, I must have bought at least 2/3 of that catalog by now. Over time. Now, granted, it's not all at once. It was over time. We're talking like 5 years over time. I've literally I'll go, oh, there's a sale. I'm gonna pick up like a little, like small little things, like $2 to $3. That doesn't really feel too bad, you know. And then once in a while, I'll be like, oh, there's a really nice piece that's like $12. I'll take it. And you know, those are the things you kind of want to look for, are like stock art bundles and Drive Through RPG too. Like sometimes artists will put a big giant bundle, and that's a big money saver as well. You can also use stock art from places that are royalty free. And now the only thing is you just need to check to make sure that those websites are actually royalty free, because there are some that aren't. And so you just need to follow those terms and services and things like that. But other than that, like DM's Guild already provides a lot of free art. Some of the creators provide even stock art for DM's Guild because there are a lot of artist creators on the DM's Guild who love what they do and they want to provide a resource for the community. And so they also provide packs and stuff like that. So you have, I will say, just between Drive-Thru RPG and DM's Guild alone, you have a large library and catalog to choose from before you even need to venture out into the wider stock art marketplaces.
Yeah. And when it comes to layout too, you don't need to have InDesign. There are some templates for Microsoft Word, some very good templates actually, and it looks like a Wizards of the Coast designed product at the end.
Laura Erzberger's Word template is
fantastic.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's great.
You can do some pretty great stuff with GM Binder and Home Brewery. Like my first adventure with Amber was the Deathless Skies of Sire, and that thing looks pretty good for us finagling that in GM Binder ourselves, if I do say so myself.
Yeah. If like Word, as you mentioned, existing templates that are really great, but there's also open source, like free options for other layout software. So just like looking up like open source InDesign, you'll get a bunch of different recommendations for free options.
I will say, if you do want like that little edge of professionalism, Affinity Publisher is a great one that isn't a subscription based. They do run sales, so just if you do see that sale, that's a great opportunity to hit in on it. They recently did one during the summer, so I'm sure they'll do it again sometime in the future. They did in the summer. It was like all 3 of their programs for like $75. That was like a great personal investment for anyone who wants to get in. So I always encourage that, like, just keep an eye out on the sales or any kind of promotions.
Yeah.
Sometimes Humble Bundle does like software bundles as well, and those are great places to look too. So you can keep an eye out for those. Except the email notifications once in a while, and you'll be surprised what you find.
Yeah.
Can I add one more thing too?
Yeah.
I'm talking about free. So if you can get into the community, and there's the I suddenly forgot its name, the DM's Guild Creators Lounge. You can find a lot of people who are starting out as well. And what that allows is, when none of you have resources or portfolios or, assets or money yet, you can collaborate with people and each bring your specific skills to the project for royalties. And so if you can find, like, someone does the writing, someone does the layout, someone does the art, someone does the editing, and you all get royalties on it, that's a great way to start out while you're all building your portfolio. I did so many projects like that in the beginning where we used stock art, and we were learning Affinity Publisher, and I was cutting my teeth on D&D editing and getting used to it. So the community is a great place to find those kinds of collaborations where you can split royalties on the final project instead of paying out specific per word rates.
Yes. And Dungeon Masters Guild has a tool set where you can divide up royalties, and they'll go to people's different accounts automatically, which is very useful for those collaborations. That sort of answers Jason Criscuolo's second part of the question. So if you want to collaborate with an artist in that way and you have a very low budget, you can negotiate royalties or maybe a lower rate plus royalties. Discuss that with them. But since we're talking about art and layout right now, I did want to quickly ask the first part of your question, which was like, how much goes into graphics? Like, if you're just starting out, how would you prioritize that?
Cover. Prioritize your cover. The cover is always, it's the customer's first impression, even in the book publishing world, which I do for my day job. Cover every time.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, that would have been my answer as well.
If you're going to spend money on anything, spend it on the cover. The rest can be stock art. If you can also find some really great stock art that makes good covers. Dean Spencer, when Steve and I published the player primer Icewind Dale, we just used a piece of stock art for that, but it's a striking piece and it sold really well. So definitely do cover first. After that, some key pieces of art for some of your sort of pivotal beats, I would say. And I think getting an accessible layout is fairly important. I think that people think art is above layout in terms of priority. I don't think that's true, because layout is what makes things accessible and easy to read and flow well, and like it's the arrangement of information. So keep those equal, in my opinion. You know, if you need to invest in layout, invest in layout, and then if you need to invest in art, invest in art. But we've also already talked about ways to do both of those fairly well for free.
Yeah. I have 2 more art tips for folks for on a low budget. If you're not looking for illustrative art, but you're able to work with and manipulate photos, Unsplash, like unsplash.com, is a great resource for photography, a lot of really evocative photography too. You just got to get used to and good at the search function on that site. And then a lot of creators actually, they'll look on DeviantArt for pieces that a creator has already made that really fits, say, their cover usually. And then they'll message the creator to ask, how do I get rights to use that for my cover? And because it's already been created, it's usually a lot less than if you were commissioning a piece. And I've even heard instances where a creator's like, just make sure like you really obviously credit me, and I'm happy for you to use it in your creation. So definitely check that out. I'm seeing Meredith in the chat is also calling out a site called Pexels. So check that out as well.
I had a
Yeah, Jack.
thing. We've talked about artwork, which a lot of people cover art and monster art and stuff, but maps are DM's Guild kind of considers maps artwork, and there are loads of creators who create maps that you can buy, and a lot of them have like either you can credit them or split a royalty with them to use those maps in your own product. And those are really helpful too. And I'm blanking on
Who's that?
Dyson.
Dyson
D.
logos.
Dyson, yeah, Dyson.
He gives away
logos.
tons
I've
of
used a
maps.
few Dyson logos
Yeah.
apps in my time.
And
they're
good.
wonderful.
He makes the maps, or a lot of the maps, for official Wizards products, and he gives away a lot of maps on his own website that you can use with just accrediting him. So a lot of free maps, and maps go a long way to help you in just kind of designing the layout of your story, where you're like, if you can picture it in your head, it helps you kind of flow things through. So those are free maps are great.
Yeah, if you find a map creator that you really like, it's also worth seeing if they have a setup like Patreon or Ko-Fi subscriptions, because usually you'll get access to a bunch of maps and you can check if you're allowed to use those for commercial products. And then it's like maybe $5 a month or something, but you have this treasure trove of maps. But as Jack mentioned, Dyson gives away a lot for free. Just an awesome resource for the community in general. All right, so our next question is kind of a broad one, but an often asked one, which is, what tips do you have for marketing your product? So if you created it, how do you get that out there? And while you all think, I want to specifically ask Sadie, what tips do you have for writing a product description?
I have tips for writing a product description. Let's get into this. Okay. So I work at a book publisher for my day job, and we have to create what are called tip sheets. And I happen to know that actually that some publishers in the TTRPG community create similar sheets. These sheets tend to have a positioning statement, the key selling points, the book description. It'll have comp titles, but we'll get into that later. But from this, I have sort of learned how you can position a book well on a product page. And what I've learned is the first thing you need is a strong positioning statement. It's effectively your elevator pitch. It is a 1 sentence, maybe 2 statement about what the product is and why people want it. So if I wrote a book that was all about the Van Richten domains, I would say, this is your comprehensive, all-inclusive, supplement for understanding the domains and how to run them. That is a 1-sentence elevator pitch that I can use anywhere. And you can pack a detail in there, don't overcrowd it, but you basically want to tell people why they want it and what it's going to do for them. So is it going to make running your game easier? Is it an adventure that is filled with wonder and whimsy? Is it a combat? Is it new and innovative with combat and items? Whatever your pitch is, put it in the positioning statement. Then you effectively want a bullet point list of everything that it offers to you. You remember, people glance at this product page and they look at it very quickly to decide if they want it or not. Probably no one is reading your product page word for word. So you're trying to basically give them information in a way that they will process in the 5 seconds that they give your product page tops. And so if you write on a 6-paragraph block about why they should buy this book, and the points about why it's great are buried in lines and lines and lines of text, they're going to click off, because that this isn't the place to be Shakespeare and wax eloquent about how lovely your product is, because you have like 5 seconds. So then you have a bullet point list, such as a 52-page book detailing all of the domains, 15 new stat blocks with innovative mechanics, 3 new items, 4 backgrounds, 6 subclasses, because then they can easily see, I'm getting this many domains, this many stat blocks, this many subclasses, and that's a selling point for you. Because they're asking, when they look at your product page, what am I getting? Is this worth my money? What am I getting for the money that I'm about to pay you? And you don't want to bury that in lines of text. You want them to be able to go, oh, for $5, I'm getting 5 subclasses, 6 items, and this much. So positioning a statement, bullet point list that easily divides out. If you're writing an adventure and you have maps, mention it. If you're writing an adventure and you have handouts, mention it. If you have an accessible, a screen reader accessible version, or a version that is made for printing, mention it. Anything in there that makes this an easier buy for people, mention that. And then you go into your paragraph descriptions where you can wax a little eloquent. You can say, explore the domains in this beautiful, this beautifully designed supplement that teaches you about each domain and how to run it effectively. And then you can go into a little detail, give specific examples too, like if you like such and such domain, find hack and slash horror in this domain, explore the eldritch horror of this domain, go to this horrifying gala in this domain. You want to give specific examples, because again, remember, you're telling people what they're buying, and you want to give varied examples because you're trying to hit someone who likes hack and slash, someone who likes eldritch horror, someone who wants to go to a fancy gala and get their pants scared off of them. So give that 2-3 paragraphs tops. I mean, with books, we generally do 1 to 2. You don't want to load up that product page too much, because again, it's like 5 seconds that they'll give you, maybe 30 if they really like what you're pitching. And so lay out some specific examples, make it sound good. If you have an artist that you really want to highlight, featuring, art by the renowned artist such and such, or featuring contributions from the well-known such and such, you can put that there. Those are your selling points. And I think with indie designers, sometimes they feel like it's a little skeezy to use that kind of marketing language, but we do that all the time in the publishing world. When we publish an interior design book, we'll say a foreword by, famous designer such and such, because it is marketing. You do want people to go, oh, I know that person, I want to read what they wrote. So list your contributors. A couple well-placed graphics can help really spruce up the page. But the more graphics you put on there, the longer the page is going to take to load. So don't overload it with graphics either. You can give a couple of spreads. If you go onto Amazon and look at their books, you'll notice that they have a look inside, which DM's Guild helpfully has as a feature, the miniature preview and the full-sized preview. But there's also, think about accessibility and ease of access. If you can pick 2 spreads that are particularly beautiful and that will make people really want this beautiful book, put them down at the bottom. Let people see it. It's really about thinking about, like, keeping in mind that you have maybe 30 seconds tops. You want accessible information at all points, and it needs to be targeted toward, why should I buy this? What does it do for me? How is it going to enrich my D&D experience? And if you can answer those questions in a way that people can grab, you will sell this product much better than if you write a 10-paragraph novel where all of that information is lost.
Yeah. So that is a masterclass in, like, a mini masterclass in how to market on DM's Guild itself, which is very important. There's a lot of folks, especially while you're in that new bar, when your product first launches, who are getting eyeballs on your product description. But Kat and Jacky, what are things you do to market your adventures off of DM's Guild itself?
I think.
Go, Kat.
Making use of social media, I think, is really, and your community. I think, early on, we all talked about how important the community is, and it's not just for the networking opportunities. It's for opportunities where you can, highlight each other's works. I think that's a very important factor, because you want to reach the people who are in the community and invested and want to buy your products and want to see you succeed. And the more you're involved with your community, the more likely they're going to share your work. For me, I've been lucky because I have D20 Dames, so that's like my marketing tool.
Start an amazing podcast.
Start an amazing podcast, exactly, right?
Super easy, just
So simple. So easy.
simple.
Step 1, start a podcast.
Start a podcast. I will say that I did definitely use my blog in the very early days to promote even my own products, just because because I had a small viewership, so I knew I had people who would read. So like when you're I definitely encourage leaning into your community and obviously supporting each other in the community. But as time goes on, you may even develop your own community, and that is something that you then focus your attention on, because those are the people that you're catering to, that you're also that they support you, and you want to showcase, and they really want to showcase all your good work, and so that's where your focus will sometimes shift. And I know that for a while, I did do that for quite a while. And the other thing I will say on the social media angle is, I would say in the beginning, try to figure out which is your place that has your best audience reach. Find out where's your best engagement, because if you do explore social media, you will eventually look into how engagement works and things like that. And I will say that for the most part, there are plenty of articles out there to talk to you about what engagement means, what impressions mean, but really the core emphasis is when you notice who's giving you the attention on which platforms, focus on those, and occasionally you can go back to the other ones, but focus on the ones that have the largest reach for you, the most impact for you, so you don't waste your time, and that way whether or not you need to eventually move into things like ads or whatnot, if that is something that you are looking into. If you're not, that's fine, but focus on where the people are, and that's where you should be.
Yeah. As far as like engaging with the community, I mean, I think if you can genuinely and authentically engage with the community, that is so rewarding, not just in terms of like sales and outreach, but also just personally very rewarding if that's something you're genuinely interested in. And again, wherever you feel an actual passion, I would go in that direction. So if you love actual plays and want to share one through a podcast like Kat did, that is one possibility. But also, like Sadie, you're constantly sharing editing advice, which I saw a lot of folks in the chat talking about. Sadie's tweets about editing are amazing. I love to follow that. And those are like little mini resources for folks in the community. Or Justice Armin comes to mind. At least used to do a lot of threads of like role-playing warm-ups and stuff before the weekend. And if it's something that, like, I don't want to say it necessarily has to come naturally, because that's something you can sort of practice, but if it's something you're genuinely interested in, that will come through. It will be a boon to the community. That's really great for community building and just social interaction with making friends. Okay, so Sadie, please.
Sorry, can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Marketing is a very scary word to a lot of people, and I think it should be. It's a scary thing, and it takes experts, I think, to really know how to market. But something that you can do for you is to get used to doing what market research and comp title research is what we call it. That is one of the least scary ways that you can get used to marketing your own material. What that means is watch what other people like, watch what they respond to, watch what takes off and what doesn't, and ask yourself why it took off and why something else didn't. See how other people market their material. And if you see someone post a product and people are saying, I love that you did this, I love that you did this, I love that you included this was so great. That's a marketing tool for you, because you know that if you include that in your material, if someone says, I love that you included so much, advice on monster tactics, and you know that you have something coming out that is so pumped up with monster tactics, that's a marketing tool for you. You can say, it has all these monster tactics. It's just being cognizant of the marketing world around you, what people are doing, what people are responding to. That is such a simple way to learn how to market your own material and to basically be doing low-key market research. Nothing can compare to professionals. They are incredible and I love them, but any little bit helps.
Great tip. All right, so we only have a few minutes left. So I'm going to actually jump ahead on our list because this question overlaps with one someone asked, which is, how do you manage things like deadlines and balancing burnout and inspiration?
I can start with
deep
that.
sigh.
I can start with
Take it
that.
away,
I'll start with that.
Jacky.
All right. So for deadlines, definitely you want a tool that can keep you organized. So for me, I will say personally for me, I definitely use Google Calendar just so I can go, all right, because it's nice to know, okay, these are the deadlines, that this is the final day for the deadline. And I could put another reminder going, okay, this is X amount of days before the deadline. So that way I know where I should be, or give an idea of where I should be on the course of my deadline. Alternatively, you can also use, if you need something that's to help with your task tools, Notion is a great way to do that too. If you wanted to create a workflow, because then if you create a workflow, you can actually stage your positioning of your projects and actually have like visual Kanbans, basically. So if you actually are familiar with things like Trello or things like that, it's very much in that similar vein. And that will, and Notion is also free. So like you can easily do that for yourself. You can build a nice little work flow for yourself, and you can keep track of where you are on your projects, where you are in your drafts, and you can move things down the line. And it's very satisfying when you get to that part where you can go, done. And for burnout, I think the important thing is, just like we talked about with scope, think about the scope of your deadlines. Like, think about your limitations and how much you can personally load up. If you're that kind of person who knows that you only can do one thing at a time, do the one thing at a time. And sometimes you just have to say to yourself, I just can't, and that's okay. And that's very important for your well-being. Of course, if you're a glutton for punishment like I am, sometimes you decide to put 4 things at the same time and then ask yourself why 20 minutes later. But it is just something to think about. And also it's important to, like, when you finish a break, like when you finish your work, give yourself a chance to reward yourself, like do something fun, something you really want to do something decompressing. Or if you're even just having a stressful day while you're trying to be creative, just say, okay, this is not the day for it. We're clearly just not in it. I'm just going to I'm going to step away, do something else, or relax and do something else. Because there are times where we can't be writing 24/7, 7 days a week, as much as some of us like to think we can. It's just not going to happen. And so you should be kind to yourself and treat yourself and do what's best for you in that regard. So if you're feeling like it's just not your day, that's okay. There's always tomorrow. Oh, and also communicate when you have delays. If you're doing deadlines with a project, please, just it's okay. We all are human beings. We all understand. Just let us know so us who are in project management can go, okay, this is getting delayed. Let's just let everyone else know so we can shift things a few more days down, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That is vital advice. Take everything Jacky just said to heart, because being a good D&D designer does not mean just writing good things and designing good things. It means being a good communicator, being a good collaborator, being a team player, being someone that people are happy to work with. That is so important.
Yeah. James Introcaso once said to me something that is very similar to what you just said, Sadie, in a slightly different way, but that there are sort of like 3 things that make a really good designer. And it's like, are you a nice person to work with? Do you turn things in on time? And are your designs da bomb? And if you can get 2 out of 3 of those, then you're like, people are going to definitely want to work with you. If you have all 3, you're an absolute rock star. Kat, anything to add?
I think Sadie and Jacky really covered a lot. Like in terms of deadlines, I'm sort of the same, but I acknowledge that other people don't like using online tools. So there are bullet journals and other methods of doing that. I sort of am a mix of the two, where I do, top level is Google Calendar. Then I've got like my to-do lists, which I can just check off every day, and then I have some like index cards for other projects, which it's my own system. You can develop your own system though. And then for burnout, that's definitely a difficult thing, especially during pandemic times. It's really difficult to sort of like unplug and walk away. Like I am a full-time designer, so like my job and my hobby are very much interconnected. My only advice is, just remember to take a break, be kind to yourself. It's easier said than done, 100%, but you'll know when it's coming. And if you do need to communicate those delays, it is so important. I've been on so many projects where people just ghost you.
The worst.
Yeah. And literally, it is okay to say that you're going to be late. I've been late. If it's just going to be a couple days, that's fine. Like if it's going to be longer, definitely, if you communicate that early enough, and I think when you're going to be late, you just have to communicate it. It's not the end of the world. Everybody has personal things that come up. Just communicate it. And for inspiration, I think it's consuming media that isn't necessarily just in D&D. I get a lot of my inspiration from pop culture and mythology. So listening to Myths and Legends podcast is one thing that I love to do, because I just get so much inspiration from world mythologies. Watching movies, like this weekend we've got a GenCon. The Dames have a GenCon online live show, and all of the live shows that we do are based on pop culture. So it's D&D plus like this upcoming one is going to be basically what we do in the shadows. We've done like Fast and the Furious. We've, like I write pretty random things, but it's all based on pop culture.
There was this thing that it hasn't come out yet, so I'll have to give details later, but there's this thing that I was so stuck on. I had good ideas for 2 other parts of it, but I was so stuck on one to do with this one specific section, and I was like, heck it, I'm gonna go play World of Warcraft for the evening. I'm done. And I went and I played like 2 hours of World of Warcraft, and I came upon this one thing that from there spawned my favorite part of that entire work that I did.
Yep.
I ran to the project lead and I said, get on a meeting with me like now. And he was like, no, tomorrow. And I was like, okay, fine, tomorrow. And we got on a call and I said, this is what I want to do. I think this would be really cool. I can see it unfolding, and we batted back and forth ideas, and I can't wait to gush about it because I think it turned out really cool.
I can't wait.
Like what?
Try to guess.
What?
I can't wait till you can talk about it. I'm going to try to guess which one, which announcement.
All right. You'll, I think, soon-ish. So,
Okay.
but I think they have great advice on be sure you're taking in pop culture, because the things that inspire us are the thing, like why we wanted to write in the first place. And when you have your head down, you can forget why you started doing this. And and my one tip for working in breaks is, if you can get started writing soon enough. One of my favorite ways to schedule my writing is to basically say, how many words do I need to write a day to have 3 days off in a week? So I take Thursdays and Fridays off because those are my 2 D&D days, and I take Sundays off because I want to rest right before I start a work week. And so when I get a new assignment, I go, okay, I have this many weeks, which until the deadline, which means I have this many days, and how many words do I need to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, so that I can have those 3 days off. And that has saved my bacon so many times. Big word counts are scary, but chipping away 200 words at a time is not a bad way to just get words on the page. And the more you do up front, I've never had a situation in which I have stuck to that word count so well that I only had to do 200 words a day up until the end. But I would rather rush 1,000 words on the last day than rush 15,000 words. So, but working in those breaks while you're doing it is also vital. And just understand that breaks are so important right now.
Yeah.
I love that tip. That's a good one. Everyone write that down. All right, so we've gone a couple minutes over already, so I'm going to move us into, no worries, into outros. But as part of your outro, I'd like to answer M. Tan's question, which is, what do you think is the most important, like, one aspect of designing a successful DM's Guild product? But answer it with only 1 to 3 words as part of your outro. I'll give you all a minute to think about it. Just letting folks know there were a ton of other really great questions. If you tweet them, tag @DMs_guild, maybe throw hashtag DMs Guild in there. I will keep an eye out for those and retweet them to encourage the community to answer those questions for you. So do a tweet. We will try to answer those questions on the social media. I feel bad because Sadie looks like she's like struggling to think of something. Oh wait, no, wait. Oh, it's, what is the one most important aspect of a successful DM's Guild product? But Kat looks ready, so we'll start with Kat. Jacky, you're on next. So Kat, who are you? Who you been? Where can folks find you? What is the one most successful DM's Guild tip in a word?
Oh wait, a word.
1 to 3 words. 1 to 3 words.
All right. So I am Kat Kruger. I'm the dungeon master at D20 Dames. Also, you can find me at Steampunk Unicorn Studio. I've worked for Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, Ghostfire Gaming, all sorts of really fun companies. I've worked with pretty much everybody here. You can find me online at steampunkunicornstudio.com. And my tip is write what you want to play.
Okay, I'll allow it because you said it fast.
Did you hear the hyphens?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hyphens. Wait. Are they all M dashes? Wait, are they all M dashes instead?
Don't bring up M dashes. We'll be here for another hour. Okay, Jacky, go.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Jacky. You can always find me on Twitter at DeathByMage. I am the creative lead manager for Unbreakable Publishers. You can find all of our wonderful books that we're coming out and still coming out with at unbreakablerpg.com. And you can always find all my works on DM's Guild. I probably have a few more in the works anyways. Those will be announced sooner or later. And my tip to you is keep it simple.
That's a good one. Lawful good, kept it in the rules. But also a great one. So that's scope again. Sadie, what about you?
I took the best one.
Dang it, Jacky! Come on! So, first of all, please support D20 Dames and Unbreakable Publishing, because not only does Kat do incredible work and it's just a delight, but Jacky is coming out, like, the Unbreakable is publishing Unbreakable Revolution, right?
It came out, and it's in hardcover. You can do print on demand on hardcover on Drive-Thru RPG.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, so they do such amazing work. So please go check them out, because they have my whole heart in everything that they do. My name is Sadie Lowry. You can find me on Twitter at Incandescent, because I am obnoxious and have never had a normal tag ever. I do work for MCDM, and I've got some very cool upcoming projects that I can't talk about yet, but eventually. So you should hear about those soon-ish, and it's going to be great. My tip to you is write your truth. There's only one you. Write your truth.
Great ones. What about you, Jack? Your 3 words are optional.
Well, I'm Jack Kiser. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack's Not Funny, because I'm not. I am the creator relations representative for DM's Guild and One Bookshelf. I can never get that right.
One day.
One day I'll get it. I'll remember what it is. You can follow me on Twitter. I try to retweet as much stuff from new people, that like new creators, because through my other job as the community manager for Storytelling Collective, who runs the RPG Writer Workshop, which our Write Your First Adventure fall workshop is coming up in November. Sign-ups should be soon. I don't know if we have a date for when they open up yet, but they should be soon. Just follow it's Storytelling COL on Twitter, I think.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, because Storytelling Collective is. Yeah.
I'm still stuck on RPG Writers Workshop in my brain.
I know.
Yes. We actually do a lot of writing.
COL.
Yeah, so we do actually a lot of stuff, not just RPGs. Right now we're doing short stories. September, we've done a poetry. We released a lot of cool stuff. So if you're interested in writing, we have a lot of cool courses for all kinds of creative stuff.
And they are so fun.
Yeah,
they are.
Another great community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have 2 Discords. There's an RPG Writer Workshop specific Discord and a Storytelling Collective Discord, and there's tons of people in there that will answer questions. And if I had 3 words to describe it, my 3 words would probably just do the dang thing. So that's in parentheses. Yeah.
Everyone knows words don't count if they're in parentheses. That's another tip. If you have a word count, just put them in parentheses. They don't count.
As an editor, I have a complaint about that you just said.
And I am Lysa Penrose. I am the brand manager over at Dungeon Masters Guild, which you can follow on Twitter and Instagram at DMs_guild. You can find me personally at Lysa Penrose. And if you enjoyed this panel, come back in an hour. We're doing how to be an RPG publisher. So a little bit of a different take. Learn how to get started over on Drive-Thru RPG. That will be happening at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern time, right here on the One Bookshelf YouTube. Enjoy the rest of your GenCon online, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, for asking your questions, for watching, and thank you, Kat, Jacky, and Sadie, for making time to share your wisdoms, 3 words, and more.